everyone. Controversial topic time. So, the GATE program, that whole thing. I started making videos about it, about the CIA exploration, and then I had some issues with my phone storage that I had to fix, and then I had work, which has kept me so busy to the point of exhaustion recently. So I hadn't been able to go back to that, but I started doing some personal research into the GATE program, specifically my elementary school during the time frame that I was there, and researching the teachers that I was with, because from 3rd to 4th grade, second to 3rd or 3rd to 4th grade, I had the same teacher. She moved up a grade level with us, which is a textbook, reflection of actually what they actually did with the Gateway program in schools during that time. However, it wasn't a gifted program, period. There wasn't a pink drink, period. In my experience, I'm not speaking for everybody else, but this is my experience. It wasn't a gifted program. My siblings, who were a few years older than me, went through the gifted program at that school, at that same school. It was not the same program that I was in. The program I was in was very much hush-hush compared to that. And it was called the Discovery Program. So if you hear the Discovery Program and that automatically goes to you, then that's what you were in, probably. Not the GATE program, not honors. I feel like there's a lot of disconnect there, because I feel like there's creators on here who are just trying to make a quick buck by giving keywords and things and throwing in experiences or things that everybody will relate to just so that they can make money, versus actually talking about their own authentic experiences in this program. I could not recall or remember anything from this, except for the fact that I specifically remembered Robert Monroe's voice when I listened to it a few months ago, and the very beginning of those Gateway tapes, and the actual cover that says Wave 1, that has the little person coming out of the circle going up. I immediately recognized that. I was like, I saw that as a workbook in my classroom. It just immediately clicked for me. And I will tell you, it was called the Discovery Program. And in my area, there were a select few elementary schools, including mine, that were in cahoots with Virginia Commonwealth University and this program called MERC, that was doing experimental educational studies on students that was connected to the declassified CIA stuff about the Gateway experience and the Monroe Institute. The Monroe Institute is also in Virginia, so it was like a hop and a skip away from us. But the really, really astronomically crazy thing about it is that my elementary school specifically got a permit to put a 108-foot high antenna radio tower on their campus. Okay, and this is a small elementary school, but it had some grassy areas around it. You have to get a special permit for that, and they claimed it was for bus signals across the county, because 3 other elementary schools in the area adopted similar antenna. 2 of them were 75 feet, and then there was another location that had another 108-foot antenna. But from what I researched, that is a highly specific frequency signal, and very interesting, because also we had trailers put on our school, not for extra classes or for overflow. They were special trailers that we were pulled out into to do different things. And they were put on top of black asphalt blacktop, the playground. And we had plenty of grassy areas to put it. Now, when I researched this, it said, well, it would make more sense financially to be putting it on the grass as opposed to the black asphalt. And the fact that they put it there was an insulation frequency technique. So there's something. Now, I have all this research. I need to compile it together. There's a lot of things, but specifically the teacher that I had during these experiences was like a mom to me. And she always called me a smart cookie in the class. She called us all smart cookies, but I had a very special bond with her. And she passed away in 2009, unfortunately. But she was the best teacher I ever had. And we did the gateway stuff. And we did so many different things. And I can tell you right now that I don't have any type of malpractice or negative experience, like feelings about that teacher or about what was happening. Only a little bit of blank spots or confusion because I wasn't sure exactly everything that we were doing. But I do specifically remember listening to the Gateway tapes in the headphones and also as a class. We started as a class and she put the stuff up on the windows and we all listened to wave 1 together. Certain students had to go back and listen to wave 1 again because they were having trouble getting past that. And those of us that advanced past that would be given the headphones and told where to get our stuff because we were past wave 1 at that point. And it was only me and a few students that were able to get past that point and keep working through the system. And then all of the other kids in the class were still going through the same thing. And that was a 2-year program. And then it was gone. It was gone because the funding for it was gone. It was a specialized thing. And because Virginia standards of learning and standardized testing took over at that point. So experimental education was what it was. And experimental education isn't necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean that the CIA is planting mind things inside of you. It doesn't mean anything like that. That whole shift into, it was an educational experimental shift to see how accessing higher levels of consciousness and these different focus levels help students in the classroom to help inspire more of their creativity, to help bring their intuitive abilities into the classroom and their creativity. It was fostering something. So the feelings that I got from it, even though I don't have a lot of memories of it, are very positive, not negative. So I want to say that I think that a lot of the people that are talking about it, in my opinion, are making up things. They're using scare tactics and things to really try to grab a bunch of viewers, get views, and start making money off of this, versus people who actually went through the experience know for a fact that it wasn't a gifted program. Because here's the thing, gifted program, an honors blocked program or gifted program in elementary school is a specific track. And it requires those kids to go on a specific track. It's very intensive. They wouldn't be able to handle that plus the gateway stuff. And the Discovery project, or Project Discovery, it was also referred to as, and the Discovery program was a totally different track. It wasn't gifted, it wasn't special education, it wasn't remedial learning. It was, they had handpicked students out that they saw that had sort of out-of-the-box thinking, intuitive abilities that they knew would be a perfect match for this. So these are kids that might not have traditionally fit into the honors track or the gifted track. They weren't in need of remedial learning. They weren't in need of special education, but they were students that the teachers felt had these capabilities that would be more easily accessible. The gateway process would be more easily accessible to these children. And the identifier, I remember, is going to this thing with my parents where they had about 30 kids and they gave us a bunch of jumbo Legos and they told us to just start building something with the Legos. And let me tell you something. Within the first 5 minutes that we were at this little event, which it said it was some kind of preliminary screening process for something, some kind of program, but it didn't really explain what it was to the parents. And I remember starting to build something. I said, this yellow block looks like the beak of a bird. For some reason, I thought that. I don't know why. And I started stacking them up and then just kind of like looking at it and kind of like moving it around. Within 5 minutes of being there, the screener said, you guys can go home and she can take the blocks with her. I was the first kid dismissed from that. And I thought that meant rejection, and that's what my parents thought. But it wasn't. it was actually a very typical selection process for children entering the Discovery program, that they wanted to do these like sort of experimental education stuff on. And so they saw immediately that I was thinking way outside the box of everyone else, because I stacked up a few of these jumbo Legos, and then I had one Lego, it was like a yellow Lego, but it had a curve to it, and I put it up on top, and I thought it was a bird. I didn't tell anybody that it was a bird, but it looked strange. It didn't look like a house. It didn't look like any type of pattern. It didn't look like any type of familiar building objects. And that's what most students will do. If you give them building blocks, they're going to build a wall, or they're going to build a pattern or something that looks kind of decorative. But I was doing something really strange with the shapes, and I was playing around with the weight of the shapes. Like, if I put this curvy thing that's kind of heavier up on top, is it going to stay? Things like that. That's what they were looking for. And I was the first kid to be dismissed. My parents immediately just thought, oh, they were trying to see if she was going to be gifted, and she's obviously not gifted. She obviously has some kind of deficit. That's immediately what my parents thought. But my research tells me that this screening process with Legos was actually, during the 80s and 90s, was a very typical way that they screened kids for this specific program. And like I said, there were only 4 elementary schools in my county, and there are a lot of elementary schools in this county, that participated in this Discovery program. So not all the elementary schools nearby were even doing it. My elementary school was an anomaly because it was actually the headquarters of the research for this program, which I found out by doing research. That Virginia Commonwealth University was actually having educational researchers come in and see how students were responding to this. They were observing me. So me and the couple of other students that were progressing through these gateway tapes faster than the other kids were being observed more often by these outside people. They weren't men in suits, men in black people. They were educational researchers from a university that were writing in a science journal called Merck. So the evidence of this technology came out of the military and the CIA. And in that context, they were using it for specific things. But when education grabbed a hold of it, it became a whole new area of experimental education. So no, it is not all a bad thing. It was actually something that was supposed to help children grow their potential, grow their intuitive abilities and their creative abilities, and really try to tap into the minds of creative thinkers, outliers, people who are outside of the norm. Because there's a lot of gifted children, for instance, who never get put in gifted programs because at the surface, for instance, all of my test taking looks like an average person. And then as I progressed through school, my test taking skills were pretty bad. I was not good at just plain old standardized test taking, linear thinking. I thought way outside of the box, and I had a very imaginative mind, and I was very smart and intelligent in that way. They were trying to grow that and access that. So I am going to try and put some of this research together and make, I had my series on the Gateway program, but I'm going to kind of shift the focus of it a little bit to be more about what I now know it truly is. They didn't give us a pink drink to poison us to go to sleep or something like that. I don't believe that that's true. The people on here talking about it, claiming that they know it's true, maybe that's your truth, but for me in Virginia, that was not my truth. And I do not personally think that holds a lot of weight when it comes to the evidence of this program. The evidence of this program to me speaks to how experimental education was being put into the school system, and they were really trying to do some really cool things within the education system to help children. But it was also an experiment. That's what experimental education is. As a previous educator of 9 years, I understand what experimental education is. I understand what statistics and data has to do with each student. And it is much more involved than, let's say, blocking together gifted students and standardized testing scores and looking at a student in just that one linear way. That's the way that they were looking at students. They were trying to look at a student in a more rounded way and see if, you know, these skills could be honed in and if they could be used to help the student succeed even in a linear environment of standardized testing. So I am going to be working on that. I'm thinking that I'm going to have to slow my pace down to once a month posting on YouTube because of that. There's so much information. There's so many things and so many notes that I have that I need to put together. And that's why I'm kind of just giving you some verbal snippets of things that I've discovered. I do have the proof for all of those things. I just need to kind of put all of that information together. But if you are somebody who might have been in a program like this called the Discovery Program, if you remember that, let me know in the comments. Obviously, this is my experience. It is not speaking for everyone, and I'm not saying that any other person's experience is not valid. I'm saying I think personally, when it comes to this whole thing that blew up on TikTok, the Gateway program and everything, that became something that content creators latched onto, and they said, oh, well, it must be gifted. It must be. Well, I will tell you right now, maybe it was somehow attached to gifted programs in some places, but I promise you, from the research that I have done, and from the typical metrics of what Robert Monroe and the Monroe Institute were trying to do in that time in conjunction with education in elementary schools, they were really trying to create a separate program that was not gifted. And the reason they didn't really talk about it that much or tell parents that it was a separate track from the gifted is because they knew that the gifted parents would lash out and be like, well, why wasn't my child chosen for that? Well, why wasn't my child chosen for that? So that is a very real thing and a real issue in the 80s and 90s with that too. And that's why the program itself was kept more on the hush-hush, and it was more like one teacher moving up a grade level with kids in elementary school for whatever reason, but they kind of played it as, oh, this teacher loved your kids so much that they're moving up with them to the next grade level. So if you remember something like that in your elementary school years, you might have been in a more covert tracking system that was related to that. If you resonate with the Gateway tapes, if you remember specifically Robert Monroe's voice when he started talking about the energy conversion box, when I first listened to that again a few months ago, I immediately knew what that was. I thought to myself, how could I know what my energy conversion box is if this would be the first time that I heard this? It's because I specifically remember seeing on the desk a booklet that had that little person coming out of it, and it was the Gateway Experience tapes, the Hemi-Sync. I remember Hemi-Sync. So, anyway, I just wanted to give you guys sort of an update on that kind of stuff because I know I've been so busy with work and stuff and processing a lot of my personal journey and trauma that I have not had a moment to come on here and talk about this. But I'm going to put that research together, and please be on the lookout in the next few weeks, since I'm doing once a month videos, for a more comprehensive video about this program. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.